Good morning, welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, during our live talk program covering wisdom for living on this here Friday morning. Rise and shine and give God the glory. And this morning here, we're looking at a topic: when contending with a foolish person, all tactics fail. So welcome again. Hopefully it'll bless the night rest and ready to take on the challenges and the opportunities that present themselves to you this morning. Thanks for coming by here to both the morning to you again. Let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you again for the blessings of this day, for the blessing of life, for your word, and for the wisdom you give us, dear Lord, to understand in dealing with our fellow human beings. May you bless us, dear Father, and may we truly walk in the light of thy countenance. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So, dealing with this topic here, when contending with a foolish person, all tactics are fail, or all tactics fail. And this is taken from Proverbs chapter 29, verse 9. And I'm going to be reading Proverbs 29, verse 2 through 9. Proverbs 29, verse 2 through 9. But my main focus here will be on verse 9. But I'll review all these verses with you, and then I get to verse 9. So I'll read through Proverbs 29, verse 2 through 9, as we do our wisdom, our meditation from the wisdom passages on Fridays. So when the righteous are in authority, this is verse 2, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. Verse 3 says, whoso loveth wisdom rejoiceth his father, but he that keepeth company with harlots spendeth its substance. The king by judgment established the land, but he that receiveth gifts overthrow it. A man that flattereth his neighbor spreadeth a net for his feet. In the transgression of an evil man there is a snare, but the righteous doth sing and rejoice. The righteous consider the cause of the poor, but the wicked regard it not to know it. Scornful men bring a city into snare, but wise men turn away wrath. If a wise man contend with a foolish man, whether he rage or laugh, there is no rest. So those are 8 verses, very important verses, beautiful verses here on life, a swat of life. And a lot of Proverbs, as you know, compare the righteous and the wicked. As you can see there in verse 7, the righteous consider the cause of the poor, but the wicked regard it not to know it, don't want to know it. If you're causing poor people to suffer, you might not want to know what is the effect of your choices. So God doesn't want to know. So we are particularly interested in the cause of the poor. And as we do that, sometimes a person might hear us talk about certain things and think we're just harping on something, but it's just simply, we just want to know what's going on. You can't help if you don't know. So in verse 2, I'll review all these verses, and then my main focus, but not my entire focus, will be on verse 9. So in verse 2 it says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. And this is the reality. And I've thought about this much in the last few years. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. And this is true in a family, it's true in a organization, a church, a business. It's true in a state, a country. If the righteous are in charge, the people rejoice. There's something positive. But when the wicked are in charge, all kind of mess going on. And that's true, because they push forward certain things. They're abusive. They abuse their authority. They abuse their power. And so authority is not the issue. The issue is who's hold the authority. You know, you read the Bible, you see when a good king is in charge, the people flourish, the people are happy. Men can have freedom. Men don't have to contest all the time for their rights and for their dignity. The poor is treated right. The stranger is treated right. And the wicked go in hiding. But when a wicked person beareth rule, the people mourn because it's not going to be well. It's all kind of evil. As a matter of fact, in most wicked places where there are places that people are suffering and there's evil people running it, you'll notice that it's just bad. And people are trying to flee, they're running, they're going, they become refugees because some evildoer hold the sway. And this is something that happened globally, but it happened also in families. Evil men break their families up, and that's just the reality. And evil women break their families up, and that again is just the reality. So it is something that to always be amazed when you watch this and see how people hide, people are scared because somebody has the reign. That and nobody can have a reign by himself, or herself. No evil leader or righteous leader can have a reign without a lot of supporters. And I think this is where it becomes tricky, because a person evil, they're in charge, but there's a lot of supporters. And they're happy for that because they get to see their despotic sick concepts or ideas being put forward. So what have I been thinking about this a lot? I've been thinking about it a lot because it says here, but when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. Now, the sad reality about it is that when the wicked bear rule, it's not just those who don't agree with the wicked and the righteous that mourn. It's everybody mourn, the people. And so what's the thought from this? My thought from this is when I observe this, say you have a ruler come in town and he's not put there by the people. And even if the righteous are not for it, but the people put him there. And he says, man, we're going to war. Well, whose kids are going to go to war? It's the people that put him there. Their kids are going to go die for his evil, despotic concepts. And so you read history of humanity, you see all these wars. Well, is somebody baby going to fight? And most wars is children fighting the wars anyhow, young men. So the people are going to mourn in various different ways. When evil rulers come into town, there's more natural disasters, because God has to settle some scores. God has the judge have to balance stuff out. There's going to be some penalties. And you always notice when evil leaders come in charge, or they take the evil too serious. There's just the natural disasters just get out of hand, and the people mourn. This is going to be mourning all around. So I've been thinking about that a lot, because at first glance, it's talking about the righteous and the wicked, and so, but it does. Notice the text doesn't clarify if it's just the innocent mourn. It just says the people, everybody. A good leader come in town, evil doers are benefited. That's just the reality. Because the positives are outweighing the negatives. And that's just the reality. So it is something to observe. And it's the same thing. If a person leading out their family and their family mourning, well, one has to really sit back and think about it and say, why my family mourns so much? And you realize, well, he who is in charge is causing the people to mourn. It just doesn't discriminate. Evildoers always just give it to everybody. I never used to think this way until I started to observe that a person is hateful. They're just hateful for everybody. And later on you find out their family look miserable because they're miserable. They're giving it to everybody. But I think probably it's just only me alone they were giving it to, or some other stranger or somebody. But I realized they were giving it to everybody. Everybody's on psychotropic mental health drugs because everybody in the family is depressed because this man is giving it to their family. So the people mourn. And so this is the reality. In verse 3, it says, whoso loveth wisdom rejoices at his father, but he that keepeth company with harlots spendeth his substance. This is the idea again of a foolish person. Normally the person thinking, oh, I'm slaying all day long. I'm sleeping with all these harlots. Look at them, they look fabulous. But it's really foolish. The guy that does this is really just blowing his resources and just being preyed upon. And that's the trick of life. I remember sometime, how many decades ago, I was realizing that often it is not what seemed to be the winner is the winner. You see, you talk to a guy and he's there, as I say, sleeping with harlots. And he's burning his resources, he's burning his body, literally picking up diseases and all kind of stuff like that. And you talk to him, oh, he's the winner. He's winning. As a matter of fact, ironically enough, if you remember the story with, I can't remember his name. He used to star on this sitcom called 2.5 Men. Charlie Sheen, I think his name was. And I remember when he was buying all these supercars, these super sports cars for the harlots, the prostitutes he was sleeping with. Or the hoes, I don't know what you call them. And he was saying he was winning. He was going to the media and saying he's winning while his life was spiraling out of control with drugs and harlotry. And then when he came to a certain level of sobriety, he tried to sue the ladies to get back the cars. He was buying cars for $200 and something thousand and so forth. And he tried to sue them to get it back, and he couldn't because he had bought it for them fair and square. And I remember that, and you're thinking about it, and it was constantly in the news. But you couldn't tell him when he was doing it that he wasn't winning. But he was saying he was winning. But he wasn't winning. So whosoever loveth wisdom rejoiceth his father. But he that keepeth company with harlots spendeth his substance. Just blow it. And then you say, well, who's winning? Who is abusing who? And at the end of the day, he was abusing them per se. I'm not going to take that away. But that's their business. So it's not really abuse because they're turning tricks. He was being abused. And he was the one, like the prodigal son story, was going to end up stealing food from pigs. But I think he got rescued because his father also is a movie star. So, but so many men have gone on that role of the prodigal son. And they think they're going to live a righteous life with harlots, only to know that they've been preyed upon. And that's interesting enough in even when we talk about the Me Too movement, that many a time these people, they're in it for being praised. They're the prey. But later on, after they preyed on the person, took as much money as they could, and they move on to another victim, then they run out of money themselves. I'm talking about the harlots. And then next you know, they're suing the person that they used to prey upon to see if they can get some more money out of them. And so they were abused. We're talking about some, Delilah, a Jezebel level of some creativity. But when you're foolish, you think, oh, I'm winning because I'm the one with all these harlots. And you guys over there, you have no harlots. But losers. So this is where it is, the Bible is so wise, because spirituality is, may I say, twisted. It is not what meets the eye. It is the obvious, but it's not the obvious because you don't see it at first. When you read the Bible, it says things that people say it is not an inspired book because it says it the back way. It said it's the opposite. If this was uninspired, it would say the man is abusing the harlot. But because it's inspired, it says that he's spending his substance. He's losing, not winning. But you can't tell him that. The Bible, as it says, backward, but it's forward. Now, verse 4 says, the king by judgment established the land, but he that receiveth gifts overthrow the land. Yesterday, I've covered a few Thursdays ago this thing about these men, these Americans that had gone on to Haiti and to try to rob the central bank. And it's coming out more that says it was the leader of the country that had brought them in there to steal money. So you think about that. This has been something in the history of the world. The leaders will rip off the country. And what's the history of the world? It's a history of the world, but it's modern time. They'll rip off their own country and then take the loot to like England, France, or America, and leave the people to suffer. And so this is nothing new. This has been something that has always happened. So notice here, the king by judgment established the land, but he that receiveth gifts overthroweth it. Basically a traitor. Somebody's willing to overthrow and mess up the country for their own personal gain, so they can live in a life of luxury and leave the poor people there back to suffer. And so it's sad to see this thing constantly happening. But it's just human beings that always did this. It's not new. It's just they just have a place to escape, so they'll just rip off their country and then escape somewhere to Europe or America, even sometime Russia, and go enjoy the loot with other criminals. And so the Bible, as I said, the Bible just state these things, and you see these things in play. People will sell their own people off for nothing. Verse 5 says, a man that flattereth his neighbor spreadeth a net for his feet. So one has to be very careful when people commend you. A person can be commending you and they're just absolutely not trying to flatter you, they're just stating a fact. But a lot of times you have to watch people who overly just sing your praises. You got to watch that. In verse 6 says, in the transgression of an evil man there is a snare, but the righteous that sing and rejoice. And it's going to go in line with what I want to talk about towards the end here, about when contending with a foolish person, all tactics are off. Why is it that a person is foolish? In verse 7, the righteous consider it the cause of the poor, but the wicked regard it not to know it. And this is where something you talk to a person. You talk to a person, they'll say, they don't follow the news. It's too depressing. They don't know what's going on in the society. They're ignorant of the plight of the poor. They're ignorant of the things that are happening outside of their house. And that could be the person just simply wicked. It could be this person just willfully don't want to know, and they don't care. But remember, there's sin of omission and sin of commission. The person just don't want to know, and yet they're active to vote, to support certain candidate. But they're ignorant of the plight of those who are suffering. They tend not to know. Or you could really put them in the category of the wicked who just don't want to know, who regard it not to know that they're wicked. Because if you're voting and you don't want to know what's going on with the poor around you, then you're wicked. Because you're willing to put in power somebody that's going to oppress the poor. Why you're not want to know? It's better to know and then say, look, I'm still voting for this person because this person give it to the poor. This person put their boot in the neck of the poor and stuff it up their buttocks. And then you just vote. And then I can say, well, you're wicked, but you're wicked in knowledge. But a person just goes out there per se and vote for somebody. But say, I don't really know. I don't know what's going on behind my house. And I say, you know how the ghettos are formed. You know how poor people got into the ghetto. You know the history of America and history of whatever country you're listening me from, and how things are shaped the way they're shaped. No, I don't want to know. But you want to vote. And you want to support certain leaders. So then, the flip of that is that when bad things happen, then you have to embrace it also. When punishment come from the mighty God, you got to embrace it and say, well, for my ignorance or my unwillingness to understand what my vote does, I should be punished. So I think when we see certain disasters, there's a certain point where you never take pleasure in the suffering of people, because suffering is bad, period. If you ever feel pain, pain is a terrible thing. But when you feel pain or hunger, it should make you be sensitive and want to know what's going on. And how did that happen? And how did my vote affect that? Because remember, we are held responsible for whatever candidate we put into power, whatever person we support. And when they're there running a country into the ground, when they're there causing poor people to suffer, we have to be concerned with that. But a person who say, oh, I don't pay attention to the news. What do you mean, you don't watch the news or you don't read the news? Because I don't say if you don't want to watch the news. Because for one, I don't watch the news. I can't watch the news. It's horrific. I watch certain probably online independent news, but I won't watch mainline news. You probably hear me talk a lot about the news here. You probably think I don't watch it. I don't be like I probably watch a clip if it comes up in my feed or something like that on a certain topic. But I will not sit and watch like a evening news or just I haven't done it in years. And over the years, if I catch it, like a few weeks ago, I'd catch I think some of the major news because I had access to a TV and I was seeing it. I just can't do it. It's just unreal. It's like watching a fictional movie. These people are off the wall. You is anyhow. So it is because it's so skewed and so it's just dumb. The things that they're concerned about is like nonsense. So the righteous consider the cause of the poor, but the wicked regard it not to know it. And there's people out there even watch the news and they don't know what's going on. It's sad. And if you're a regular viewer of news and stuff like that, you might be shocked what I just say. So that's tell you that we're miles apart. So the righteous consider it the cause of the poor, but the wicked regarded it not. Because you can watch the news, and the newscasters say something. I guess I should talk about this since I bring it up, so you don't think I'm too crazy. So the newscasters say something, and there's like 50 unanswered questions, and they go on to talk about something in great detail that is really relevant. But this thing over here, that have all these unanswered questions, they ain't trying to answer the question. And so there's no clear expose or information given that would say it is the news. And they move on. And I spend a lot of time talking about stuff that is like, yeah, really, what? And just very skewed and biased. So the righteous consider the cause of the poor, but the wicked regard it not to know it. So a person will say, you met people, I always call them pavement heads. It's like they head like pavement. They couldn't care less what's going on even in their country, in their state. They have a blah. And I guarantee they have that blah behavior towards everything in their life. So one have to consider this. Verse 8 says, scornful men bring a city into a snare, but wise men turn away wrath. So scornful men, if you notice every time like somebody do something weird, like you'll have a city and somebody city do something very racially motivated and aggressive, and then like the mayor and different people from the town say, well, this person doesn't represent our town, because all of a sudden they see visitors don't want to come to the town. They see people probably think, if I come to that town, I'm going to be treated bad. So they'll come out and they'll be like, we're distancing ourselves from the action of this one individual. This individual doesn't represent our city. Our city is a city that welcome all people and treat people with respect and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you've seen that multiple times on the news. They'll come out and do a press conference because they don't want the visitors, they want business people, they want investors thinking it's a bunch of scornful people living in that city. The city will be unwelcoming to international travelers, welcoming to whatever. And then you'll have something like that happen, and you have locals now defending the person while they're picking, I guess, snot out of their nose and being real dumb, defending the action of the ignorant and the hateful. And as the Bible said, the scornful. And then they leave a message basically like, don't come to our town because we don't want your kind around. I'm sure you've heard that type of talk. We don't want your kind around. And so that type of kind will just stay away. And just like we're going to leave it. Throughout the Bible history, you have all these type of stuff where people go somewhere and they're treated bad. And then the place have a reputation for being unwelcoming to strangers, unwelcoming to others. And so you stay away. But if you go somewhere and say, for instance, their business is tourism, and you're a foreigner, you expect that I'm going to go to this place is going to be treat tourists nice. They're actually, instead of being exclusive, so to speak, they're inclusive, and they're going to welcome you. And so people who are foreigners or people who are strangers or from out of town is going to think that's the place to go. As a matter of fact, you think about Sodom and Gomorrah. that you would say Sodom and Gomorrah would not be a tourist-friendly place. Sodom and Gomorrah would not be a tourist-friendly place because if you read the history of Sodom, it was filled with all these rapists. So you wouldn't say a place that's filled with rapists, from children to adults, would be a place that tourists will go. The other thing that you know about Sodom and Gomorrah that was dangerous is that the Lot, the patriarch, he saw the two angels or the two men in the street. Just say he saw them as two men, and he pressed them to come inside of his house. And he knew it wasn't safe. One thing you know about an area that is a very tourist-friendly area is that you can actually walk at night outside of, say, the hotel. You can know a place that is not safe, and the citizens aren't safe, and foreigners definitely not safe when you can't go for a walk. And if you're going for a walk, somebody like, you sure? I've been places before, and if you leave and somebody say, you sure you want to go for a walk down there? I'm like, yeah, what could happen? And if something bad happened now, it brings reports. Notice every time there's a tourist destination and a foreigner get killed, it makes international news. Why? Because they need to tell other people, if you're going there, be careful. And then like the State Department will put out a warning, a red flag warning on that area because it's not good. Now when they do that, that place now is kind of forced to clean up its act. But what it does now, it kills the tourism. And this is where, from that point of view, a scornful men bring a city into a snare. But wise men turn away wrath. Because then what it is, somebody like, oh no, we're going to make sure we take care of the strangers. Because you guys coming in, you're spending money in our town. You're looking after us. You're looking forward to us. And as I said, this can be applied to family. It can be applied to a church, an organization, a business. If your business is to interact with the public and I go into your business and I don't want to deal with anybody inside your business, it's bad for business because I cringe when I go to certain businesses. And so if I cringe too often, I'm going to find an alternative because I know the workers there, they're just a mess. They're rude and whatever. But a wise person, because that's basically a rat, I see it the same way. But a wise person turn away rat so that you can become welcoming. A wise person will make sure that everybody is comfortable, everybody is welcome, and people feel safe. People are not treated rough. You know, there's certain places I just wouldn't go. You know, why would I go there? And if you think about it, a lot of these places, even inside of America, I'm not talking about where I'm at, the city's in decline because they have this type of attitude. Certain people are not welcome. And so they stay there and they're monolithic. And they're going to die by themselves and they're dying. And they don't welcome. Over the years, I've belonged to churches that in the past that were like that. Their attitude was, your kind is not welcome. They don't receive you. And you look around the church, and you're like, there's no young people in the church. And their young people ended up leaving and going out in the world where it's more welcoming per se. And it's like they never click to them and say, just be nice to strangers. Just welcome people who are other. And they take up this unwelcoming thing. And then, you know, after a while, you're in the church and you're like, it's all these old people in the church. And they're old and unfriendly. And they're not going to welcome anything that is not theirs. And they end up pushing away theirs also. Because that's the trick. Because an unwelcoming stance is unwelcoming to everybody. And I used to see this in the church and see a church dying. I would say, man, is it they're dying because they don't believe in truth? And all of a sudden I start realizing they're dying because they don't like people. And then their kids are out of church. And they're praying for the kids in futility, wasting their time. Because why would you want to be around somebody like that? And then I see it in the church and I'm like, okay, that's in the church. Then I started seeing it in the community. And then I started seeing it as a national problem. And I was like, oh, it's the same thing I was seeing in the church. Because the church is just a microcosm of the society. They're dying and they're dying by themselves. You go to the nursing home and they'll complain that none of their kids or grandkids come and visit. And I'm like, why would they visit? You're not nice. But I didn't understand it was something you were observing in the general society. And nobody want to be around that, and all the young people running out and leaving. They don't want to be around that cold-blooded person. You want to be around a warm-blooded person. So a scornful men bring a city into a snare. And so many of these cities are being snared because of that. And many of these places, they're in a downturn, and they think probably what we need is just some jobs. But life is more than job. When you're welcoming, people want to be around you. And he said, but a wise man turn away. Right. And that's simply it. So now to our main text. Proverbs 29 verse 9. Proverbs 29 verse 9, as I continue here with wisdom for living. When contending with a foolish person, all tactics fail. Notice Proverbs 29 verse 9. If a wise man contended with a foolish man, whether he rage or laugh, there is no rest. So this text here, I'm sure you've dealt with this before. In dealing with a person that's foolish, no matter what you try, you ain't gonna work. It's just the person. The solution is not to fix the problem. The solution is the person to go to God and say, God, just help me not be a fool anymore, because nothing works. So if a wise man contend with a foolish man, so you think the wise man, he has an edge. Say two foolish people arguing. All right, you know how that goes. Most of the time it turns to fisticuffs, to blows. So two wise men going at each other, it's going to have a resolution for the most part. But when two foolish people go together, forget about it. It blows up. Always fascinated when I see two, you have a foolish person, they give everybody a headache. But then sooner or later they run into another foolish person. And the two of them, they really give each other the business. Have you ever seen that? You can raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. You've been in a group and said there's one foolish person. They're giving everybody a headache. But people just ignore them and try to be merciful and kind to them. And they take the kindness as being weakness, and they abuse the people more. Okay. Then now two ignores, as they say, foolish people run into each other, and then the two of them give each other what they deserve. They make it up for everybody else that didn't give them a hard time. But now coming in now this text, and this text says, if a wise man contend with a foolish man, whether he rage or he laughs, there is no rest. Now, many translations translate this almost, totally different from King James Version. How most translations translate this, the word contend, they put in their court. So the contention is in a court situation, right? They go to court and they're contending. And then also some of the translation will render whether he rage or laugh, referring to the foolish person. Here it seems to be referring to the person who is wise. But either way, all the translation means the same thing in my mind, I guess. And then at the last there says there's no rest. Some translation basically say there's no resolution, because you're going to resolve a problem. So my topic again, when contending with a foolish person, all tactics are off. So I'm still leaning on resting my case, so to speak, on the King James Version. But I have all the translation in my mind, so I'm going to congeal it all together. So a wise person, whether he's talking in the public or he's talking in a court of appeals or whatever, and because things came to a point where he's contending now. We're not just, hey, could you help me do this, or could you do this for me, or could you not build a fence on my side of the property, or whatever. And so it ends in court or it ends in a contention. In other words, there's a battle going on. So there's not something to ignore, because some things you can't ignore. As the Bible says, go the extra mile, turn the cheek, but there's a certain point where you turn one cheek, third cheek, and the person wants to get slapped you on your butt cheek, and you're like, okay, we're gonna stop right there. The Bible didn't tell me to turn my fourth cheek or fifth, my third or fifth or fourth cheek. So there's a certain point where you say, okay, no, we're going to have to go to court, or we're going to have to battle this out. So either way, if the foolish person is the person that rages or laughs, or if the person who's wise rages or laughs, bottom line, no resolution. There's no rest. You didn't get you can say, finally I get that nagging problem fixed. The bottom line is the last part, no rest or no resolution, because it's what you're dealing with. It might be straightforward to a wise person, the solution, but to a foolish person, they're coming up with all kind of excuses, conspiracy theories, this, that. It just never stops. Can't get nowhere with them. So if a wise man contended with a foolish man, whether he rage, if the wise man rage, he scream, hit the desk, pound his table, fist at the air, take his hair and pull it, get mad, start going hoarse because he's screaming so hard. The foolish person, that's it, you're wasting your time. If the wise person say, okay, that's not working, let's talk pleasantly, let's even joke with the wise person. And you joke, you talk soft, you talk romantic, you talk like you're in love with the person, you talk like you just want to shower them with gifts, whatever. You foolish person, you're still not getting nowhere. Don't matter. There's not going to be no resolution. You can't win. And this is one of the hardest things to come to terms with in life. That no matter what you do with some people, you'll never win. Because the problem is not the incident, it's their foolish heads. And this is a tough lesson to learn. This is one of the toughest lessons for me to learn in life. Or at least I had to learn. Some people learn it easy. I guess it was harder for me to learn. Because I'm thinking, well, probably information, knowledge, understanding, you pour forth reason, you talk to the person nice, you talk to the person in a very conciliatory way, and I love it. I'm sure you've been in church and people say, it's the way you say it to a person. Is if you need to say something to the person, it's the way you say it to the person. So you say, okay, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try to talk to this person in one way. That don't work. You talk to them in another way. That don't work. And you realize, wait a minute. The problem is not the incident that you're trying to discuss. The problem is, it ain't never going to fix. Because as they say, stupid is forever. That's what they say. It's like, stupid is like diamond. They say diamonds are forever. I don't know about that, but that's what they say. But that's what they say about being a foolish person. It's forever. You can't fix it. Now, I believe you can't fix it because the Bible says God can't fix it. But the way to fix it is that the person, the Bible says, has to desire a fix. The person has to say, man, I'm so foolish. I need to go to God and let him give me wisdom and he will give it to me. But until that happens, all bets are off. You ain't never going to show them. Even you show them something a month later, a year later, they'll come back to you. And I've had this experience. They come back to you and they're still talking to you about the same thing. You're like, man, I thought we resolved this. Because the problem is the mind can't grasp anything. And it refuses to listen to reason. It's always, for years I wonder, like, who was the audience? Who's Alex Jones' audience? Yeah, I used to wonder that. I'm like, who will listen to this foolishness? And then I start meeting people. I'm like, oh. And you go, like, you say something crazy as a loon, craziest thing you can find. And then you go to the comment section and people like, oh, this is the best thing. This is a great thing. And you're like, oh, they're crazy. That's why. It's like he figure out to talk to his own. He crazy and them crazy. And it's just a bunch of nonsense. And so that's where you find this type of stuff. So now you're trying to show reason to somebody. And you're talking to them and just think, man, you must work for the government. You must be CIA. You must be. He's like, they believe it. So if a wise man contend with a foolish person, whether he rage or he laugh, it don't matter who. Different translation render it's the wise person raging because you don't know who is per se. The King James version renders it you think is the wise person. But I guess different translator could say, well, probably it's not the wise person raging, it's the or laughing, it's the foolish person. Doesn't matter. If a wise man contended with a foolish man, whether he rages or he laugh, no matter who's raging or laughing, there is no rest or no resolution. You're not fix the problem. Because there's always something. They can't get it. Notice the majority of disputes can be settled by being reasonable. Most disputes, you have a dispute and you can settle it out. But when you deal with a foolish person, you ain't gonna settle it out. Because in order for them to settle it out, they have to be reasonable. But the only reason why they're foolish is because they're unreasonable. See, it's like it can't work. Someone said, Lord, you don't know the possibility. He said, you're judging. You and Solomon is judging the people. Yeah, that's true. And you will never break the stacks. And as I say, I'm not trying anymore. Because I used to try to break the stacks. Not purposefully. And the Bible says you can't break the Bible. You can't break a text like this. You could try. I could give you 1,000 foolish people and say, you go argue with them. And when you come back, you're mad. You come back crazy. You lost your mind. You'll never break, because they're like you know what it is? Because a person is foolish. They stand proud in their foolishness. You see, that's the problem with being foolish. See, if you're ignorant and you just don't know, and you might even sound foolish, but you're just ignorant, but you're not prideful of it, there's a resolution for you. But a foolish person is very proud of being stupid. And they're very proud of their hard-headedness and their lack of listening to somebody else's argument. So they stuck themselves in being a fool. And they can't get out because they refuse to probably concede that they probably are wrong or that they don't have a good grasp of what is being discussed. So the concept of being reasonable is not that they genetically can't be reasonable. It's not that the brain doesn't have the ability to be reasonable. It's that they choose not to be reasonable. So it's not really a person is foolish because they're foolish. They're foolish because they choose to be foolish. So when you deal with that, the person has a deliberate, they're purposefully deciding that in all situations, I'm deciding to be a fool. What is that? Just deciding to be unreasonable. That's what a foolish person is. Just unreasonable. They won't reason. And if they reason, they're reasoning from the Bible said the foolish person only want to hear themselves. They don't want to hear another point of view. So because if they hear another point of view, it might make them think differently. This is why I think that text that says, the righteous consider it the cause of the poor, but the wicked regard it not to know it. I don't want to know. Because if I know, I might have to act. So ignorance is bliss. And this is why some people, they don't want to know. They don't want to dig a little bit deeper. They don't want to, they only want to hear their side of view, a point of view. Notice most court cases could be avoided if both parties would be reasonable. Most court cases. You give me a court case and it is not that difficult. I'm not talking about the court case that have to do with criminal, but settling disputes. Because it takes a reasonable person to settle these disputes. It takes a reasonable person to just simply say, okay, I see your point. How we can settle this? And you just settle it. Even many criminal cases and stuff like that could be settled much easier if you person willing to negotiate. You don't go to prison anyhow, so why take it to court and battle it out? Take a 5-year or a 10-year and just do the thing. So much court cases, much of it, not all of it, could be avoided if both parties could be reasonable. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't even get to a court if most parties could be reasonable. It's when people become unreasonable. You're going to business with somebody and there's a financial loss and you need to settle up whatever assets and whatever debts. But everybody wants to get in there, make the money. But when it's time to lose money, nobody want to lose money. So it become irrational. So much of the court cases would never even get to the court if people would be reasonable. Even much cases that we see that even land in the Supreme Court, they didn't have to go there. It's irrational people who are just unreasonable to their fellow human being force many of these cases, and force now somebody now to tell the police you got to enforce this rule. But a lot of these rules never ever had to go to court. A lot of what you see being fought over in the courts are simply just foolishness and unreasonable behavior that is pushing these cases. A lot of these cases where people are fighting for what they call civil rights, most of it would never have to be. You would just have to come up with a different solution. You know, there was these things going on about the bathroom bills. And then you realize that some of the solution is just, let's not add new rules. Let's just do some unisex bathrooms. Call it a day. You know, if you have two set of bathroom, it's going to be more money, but just build probably one unisex bathroom. So the transvestite can go in there and they can go in the toilet seat and jump up and down on the toilet seat and be happy. And so forth and so on. That's not a solution to the problem. It's not as simple, but I'm just saying, because if you have only one toilet, then I guess you make it unisex. But if you have two, then I guess you could make it two of them unisex and then call it a day. There's just other solutions, in other words. That I'm not trying to simplify these very difficult issues, but sometimes it can be very simple. But there's people who, you know, then there's the other flip side of that. There's somebody who want to come into the store and you put a sign down, say wet floor, and they go over to the wet floor, fall, hit their head, and then sue. That's a total different thing. That's why I say much cases, not all cases. Some cases of people just being wicked. So, but much of these disputes that we see going on around in families, you know, how many arguments that it's just two different point of view and two people just don't know how to discuss them and not get heated. Or somebody just say, I'm just going to be unreasonable. And at that point, foolishness would be tagged upon them. We all can get foolish, so to speak, or get ignorant, where I don't want to hear nothing. And it creates a lot of problems. So when contending with a foolish person, all tactics will fail. And as I say, if you're contending with me and I start to reason and behave in a foolish way, it ain't matter what you do, it ain't gonna work. Because if you get angry, I'm gonna match your anger. If you start to talk in a way that is, say you try to joke off the situation, I could get very angry. If you try to talk in a very conciliatory way or reasonable way or whatever way, if I'm unreasonable, me personally, and I know we all been there, everything you do, I'm going to interpret it. So if you try to talk to try to calm me down, I'm going to say you're condescending. If you try to get angry, I'm going to say, hey, you're getting aggressive. Everything you do, because it's an interpretation, the person is just being unreasonable. And this is why, you know, a lot of things escalate. Because the moment you cite that the actions of the person is one way or the other, then your behavior change. Also here, being comfortable in ignorance or irrational behavior creates the problem. So if you're contending with a person who is comfortable in ignorance, that means they really don't know, and that's how it's going to be. And they're not interested to know. It's going to be like that because they're not trying to find out. You know, so when you're a person, you're trying to know, and some things are difficult to deal with, they're not straightforward. And the person say, give me a yes or no answer. And I'm like, it's not that simple. And the person wants it very simple. And they want life very simplistic. Ignorance creates this type of contention. That no matter what you do, you got to explain to the person it's not that simple. And the person wants it simple. Forget about it. Irrational behavior, person just not rational. They're not thinking again. you say an irrational person is a foolish person. Because irrational behavior lends to the description of saying being foolish. Also, you will know that sin, ignorance, and lack of understanding makes people foolish. So sin, ignorance, and lack of understanding makes people foolish. You see, a person who is, say, have an addiction is really their action and their behavior and what they say let them sound foolish. You know, when a person is going after a certain sin, they become irrational. They have no reasoning. You know, people always say when they get caught with a certain crime, what was I thinking? Or when they do something very foolish, they say, what was I thinking? And then the answer is, because you wasn't thinking. But sin was, the person is thinking, they're just thinking about the sin. They're so addicted to the behavior, or as I said, they're a slave to the music, or they're a slave to the dance, that all they want to do is just do that one activity, and everything they do is rational. So a person will have buku bucks, big bucks, and within a few years they're broke, and you say, what happened? You're foolish. But it was the drive to live large and to be proud. That's what got them. And so when you deal with someone like that and you're contending with them and you say, hey, like, don't spend that money that way. Whatever you try, however you say it, you lay out the facts for them, you do this, you do that. They don't want to hear. Because whatever you're telling them, and you see this especially with young people. Young people, you see this the most with. But you can see this with old people just the same way. You're talking to a young person, you say, don't go down that path. You're going to end up like the prodigal son. But in their mind, they can't wait to get their hands on that hoe or that whore or that, harlot. So anything you say to them is just bounce off them. Because at the end of the day, they don't care what you say. They need to get into the whorehouse. And the results are going to come. But if you talk to them rough, and a lot of times this is what they'll do, especially young people. You talk to them one way or the other way. They say you drive them out of the church. But really, that's not you driving them out of the church. You just become the excuse for them to run out there and go grab one of those whores. So no matter how you do it, boom, the results are going to be the same. So sin will cause a person to act very foolish. And you're there and say, why they can't get it? They can't get it because they want to go sin. You want to go to a person hooked on any drugs and they seem reasonable. Yesterday I'd covered about how, Wednesday, I covered about how marijuana causes psychosis. But a person hooked on marijuana, please, they don't want to hear that. You're biased. You're just against marijuana. You're against the good leaf, the good herb that God made. Everything God made good, man. Eat everything. Eat crows and eat buzzards and spiders. It's all good. Because God made all things. So they don't want to hear. So you're not talking to them. All the time when I do program like that, some of them you might catch. Because one day probably might take it in their mind going and it scare them and then they come up on that information and they decide, you know what, man, I've heard enough, I'm going to put this thing down. So that's why I put it out there. For that person who probably gets so whipped by ignorance or sin that they say, you know what, I might think about it, and then you present the facts now and they'll hear it. But when a person is in a sinful, lustful, and they got to get their sick, they hit, they got to get their fix, they're not listening. It's when the fix beat them, as I say, when they're and they're robbing food from pigs, and they might come upon the information, and the information now is valuable to them. But you could be saying the same thing to a person, and 10 years later you say the same thing, and they say, oh man, this is such good information. I'm like, what? I've been saying the same thing for the last 10 years. Wait, where you were? You were always here. But it's what happened. The pig food lifestyle get to them, and now they can hear. But until that pig food lifestyle come, and they're in the pig pen eating the pig's food, they're not going to hear. It's sad, but that's what life is. Yeah, because what happened, the Bible says, the rod is for the back of a fool. So the fool has to get a beating. And when I say a beating, a hard beating, and they're like, oh, okay, I'll listen. And I'll be like, yeah, you weren't going to listen before because you didn't get the beating yet. So that's why young people, for the most part, has to go out there and get the beat down. And when they start having an upside down frown on their face, then they're willing to listen, because life has been stamping on them and treating them like a doormat. Notice again, ignorance is something what make people sometimes irrational and behave foolish. They just don't know. So they're, as I say, they stick to their guns. Lack of understanding makes people foolish. You deal with a person, they just don't understand. And so you're trying to reason with them, they can't grasp. And they're not humble enough to say, let me try to understand. They're not. Notice in Proverbs chapter 2, Bible talking about knowledge and wisdom and understanding. Proverbs 2 verse 1 through 12. Simply says, my son, if thou wilt receive my word, hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom, and apply thine heart unto understanding. Notice, you have to like it. You have to be able to trod through. Like you, me going through this information, you gotta be able to have to sit there, like try to get some value from what I'm saying. You incline your ears. That means you put your ears closer to your cell phone and say, what is he saying? Let me try to understand. But your heart has to be there. It has to be something you want. It's not something that is like, entertaining. It's not that entertaining. Even if sometimes I try to make it sound entertaining, it's difficult to stay on that, because sometimes I have to just go through hard information. Notice there, yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver, and searchest for her as hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord, and find knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. He laid up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keepeth the paths of judgment, and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness, and judgment, and equity, and every good path. Notice there, that makes you rational. It makes you reasonable. It makes it possible that people could contend with you without always going into a belligerent, ignorant stance. Notice the more foolish a person is, the more they go into a stance, because they don't want to understand. So by not listening, they never learn, because they refuse, because don't tell me nothing. So he keepeth the path of judgment, and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness, and judgment, and equity, and every good path. See, a person who understands these things, they're not foolish. You can contend with them, because they'll be like, oh, I get it now. 10 says, when wisdom entereth into thine heart, and knowledge is pleasant unto thy soul, discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee, to deliver thee from the way of the evil man, and from the man that speaketh forward things. Notice in Proverbs 28 verse 2 also we read, for the transgression of a land, many are the princes thereof, but by a man of understanding and knowledge, the state thereof shall be prolonged. You want to prolong the state, you want the state to do better, you want the country to do better, you want your own personal life to do better. You have to be able to receive knowledge and understanding. The only way to receive it is to receive it. Can't resist it and fight against it and be ignorant, and then you never will prosper. And we want to prosper, we want to be blessed, and we want to be a blessing. And we don't want to be that person that always contend and never can resolve something because we don't have any wisdom and understanding and knowledge. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, again for your word. I pray that you may be with us as we go through the rest of this day. Because you bless us, dear Lord, that we might truly be those, dear Lord, that can be reasoned with. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live Monday morning, where we should talk about motivation. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.